this stage.
Once again, for the SkullPhil Talks podcast, here's your host, Phil Green.
Hello, bonjour. Welcome to the first episode of SkullPhil Talks. My name, as said, is Phil Green, and I am the sort of person behind what is SkullPhil. Obviously, SkullPhil, Phil Green. It started off with being sort of an internet name. So, what I want to say first off, before I go into the podcast, these podcasts are marked explicit for a reason. I want to have the podcast where it's like a general conversation. I don't want to be in a position where I have to watch my P's and Q's, so that's why it's explicit. I'm not saying that I need to swear. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily going to swear, but swear words do happen. So, also on that fact, these podcasts are purely opinion, and I appreciate some people may not respect my opinion, they may not agree with my opinion, and that's the whole idea. The whole idea is, hopefully, maybe to stimulate some thought into it, and see where we go from there. So if anybody has any issues or any complaints, please get in touch with us. Visit SkullPhil.com, and there's a contact form on there. Please, we'll receive it and we will reply within 24 hours. So, that's just a brief introduction, and we shall move into the first segment, and we'll crack on. Bear with me, it is the first one. Something's probably going to go wrong. I'm already starting to think it's a bad idea. Anyways, let's see where we go. So that was a bit of cheeky music there. So let's do a bit of an intro on SkullPhil. SkullPhil has been my gaming username for a very long time, and it all revolves around a lot of my tattoos. Yes, I'm a skinhead with tattoos, and I'm start doing a podcast. Oh man, if that's not going to get me hated, what is? So yeah, a lot of my tattoos revolve around skulls, and that sort of way on. First name's Phil, SkullPhil. Now, put together a podcast is I have a lot of thoughts and opinions and just general ideas and like things running around my head, and I need an outlet for them. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, whether one person listens to this or whether a million people listen to this, for me, the journey of doing it's a little bit different. So, let me go into myself a little bit and you might understand why. About 18 months ago, everything came to a head, and I went to my doctor's, and after discussing several things with my doctor, he did an initial diagnosis of depression and anxiety. Now, I'm not telling you this to lead out the violin or anything like that. It's purely just a backstory, so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. Now, with the doctor, I don't know if any of you guys have been through this. Hopefully, if you have, you'll be able to relate to some of what I'm saying. The doctor instantly prescribed me sertraline. No, I'm lying to you. Prescribed me propranolol, which is basically a beta blocker, with the view that it would control anxiety attacks, and as long as we can control them, your depression's not really a priority to sort. After trying to do this, now you can understand the doctor, their direction for taking this propranolol was take as and when needed. Now, if anybody's ever suffered with anxiety attacks, panic attacks or anything like that, you'll realise that taking something as and when needed is the last thing on your mind when you're going through an anxiety attack. So it wasn't really efficient, it wasn't really effective. I ended up going back to the doctors and saw what I believe they call a practitioner paramedic. Basically, it's a paramedic who's based at a doctor's and he kind of does the duties of a doctor, but isn't necessarily trained the same as a GP. Now, I went and saw him, and he was a lovely fella, and he asked how I was getting on with the propranolol, and I explained to him I'm still having quite severe attacks, and he said something that I thought I'd never hear myself respond to, and he said, "Have you ever attempted suicide?" I was honest with him. I told him in the past I've planned it, and I have full intentions on committing suicide. So as a result, I ended up going in for an assessment. To cut a long story short, I was put straight on a drug called sertraline, a serotonin inhibitor. A serotonin blah 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 blah. It's an SSSR, I think it is, 4 S's and an R. Basically to increase your serotonin levels, and I went in for an assessment. That assessment has since led me to being part of a bit of a nutcase. I always explain to people that I'm 4/5 mental. It turns out that, yes, I suffer with severe depression, I suffer with severe anxiety, I have, on a daily basis, suicidal thoughts, but it could all be down to Asperges. Which is, I mean, I laugh about it because I hope it is. It gives me a reason why it may be happening, if that's the case. And that, hence, this podcast, I established very quickly the NHS had no real resources to help me. They had no real interest as such to help me. And I discovered that talking about my situation and the things in my head and how my head works, my head goes at 100 miles an hour continuously. So discussing these things and getting it out of my head, even if it's just simply recording it, is sort of my own sort of therapy. Now, like I say, it doesn't matter to me whether there's 1 or 1 million people listen to this. But if there is somebody who listens to it who does suffer with depression, anxiety, or maybe has Asperger's, and they can relate to something that I've said or how I may look at something, one of the segments that I want to try and bring in on a regular basis will be how my path with dealing with my own mental health issues has gone. It's one of them where even if I just helps one person, then it's gone above and beyond what I could ever dream of. It is a little bit selfish. This is primarily for my own self-therapy, but if I can share it with you guys, you can come along for the ride. I don't get down and out about it. Even on my very, very, very bad days, I still find a way to make a joke out of it. When my suicide was bad, my common text message to some close friends of mine would be, bit down tonight, best had all the ropes. It's just how I found that I've had to deal with it. Yeah, a lot of family. Well, to be honest with you, I'll be open. A lot of friends, family, just people I know in general turned their backs, and wasn't really. Not that they weren't interested in supporting me, because I don't expect support off anybody. But I found very quickly that the only response or responses would be they would disappear out of contact altogether, like I had the plague, or they would fall out with me and be angry at me because I was having suicidal thoughts, because I was suffering with depression. So I've had to kind of drag my little ass along. But if I can share that with you guys and we can get going with it, I'm going to talk about lots of random subjects. Sometimes I might talk about weird things that are stuck in my head. Other times I might talk about absolute complete bollocks. But it gives me an avenue to get it out. And if you guys enjoy listening to it, then so be it. It's worth a giggle. So, we're going to go into segment 2. We're going to talk about Russia, the UK and USA, kind of my thought process behind it, and Trump's visit. So, I shall catch you in segment 2.
Visit SkullPhil.com and support the show.
Okay, so let's get into the meats and potato. You've heard a bit about me, you've heard about the podcast. Obviously, as you heard in the break, just go to SkullPhil.com. We've got a store there. We'll be adding some bits and bobs there. I'm hoping I really want some t-shirts and hoodies with like really controversial, like thought-provoking graphics on. But we'll add to it as we go along. It's a building process, and I want to include anybody and everybody into it as part of the go. So let's have a look. In the UK, there was an ex-spy along with his daughter who was poisoned via a chemical agent. Now that's the base ground of it. That's as simple as it gets. The daughter, I believe, now is out of hospital. I'm unsure whether the actual gentleman is, but the last I heard, he was getting better, and neither of them have died. That's very, very important. Neither of them have died. So, within hours, literally within hours of this happening and being discovered, the UK government was already padding out that it was Russia who had carried out this chemical attack. No explanation how they did it or anything like that at the time, just it was them. No evidence, nothing at all pointed to Russia. But it was Russia. That was the narrative that was fed through mainstream media and also through the government itself. Now, I have issue with that straight away. I'm a firm believer in justice. I'm also a firm believer in evidence and innocent until proven guilty. You do not hold somebody responsible for something until you have the ability to prove guilt or innocence. So that's my viewpoint. Now, it turns out, well, the British claimed it was a chemical called Novichok, which was used on these two individuals, which is known to be a chemical that is created by Russia and stockpiled by Russia. So that was it. That was the smoking gun. Right, it's Novichok. Russia's got Novichok. So it's definitely Russia. Now, first of all, apparently it was Porton Down in the UK, the chemical weapons facility, research facility, that identified it was Novichok. First question, first red herring, and this is only me asking questions, I'm not throwing out any aspersions, but do we have Novichok samples to compare it so that we know that it was Novichok? And if we do, then Russia's not the only people to have it. I mean, that's just a question. That's just a question. So, do Russia... See, this is where it gets complicated, because an independent body then stepped in, called... I'm trying to remember, it's the OPCW, I think. Organisation for the Prevention of Chemical Warfare. They stepped in as an intermediate, absolutely unbiased body to carry out an investigation. Now, they carried out an investigation. Their initial report did not name what chemical had been used, but just confirmed that a chemical had been used. The actual chemical name was classified initially. It was in the report, but the general British, UK and worldwide people was not allowed to hear it. Now, I'm just going to tell you, Novichok is cited to be in the region of 200 times stronger than another nerve agent that's called VK1 or ZK1. VK1 or ZK, I think it's ZK1. Now, ZK1 is that potent that if you got a pin, dipped it in it, and just touched somebody's skin with that pin, that very minute amount would be enough to seep into the skin and kill them. Okay? That's the severity of the chemicals that we're talking here. That very small amount will be enough to eradicate somebody. Now remember, Novichok is 100, 200, whatever. A multiple strength of nerve agent. Let me go back to my original introduction. The lady who was supposedly poisoned has made a full recovery and is now out of hospital. The gentleman who is in the hospital, the last I actually checked, he was making a full recovery. Any third parties? There was a police officer who became ill during the investigation. He's fully recovered. There is actually no deaths through this chemical poisoning. So it raises a query in my head. If Novichok is supposed to be that deadly, that effective, why are people recovering? Why are people leaving hospital? And look, unlike Lithuania, which we're all pretty dead set that it was the Russians that carried out, it's pretty taken for granted that it was the Russians. I think even to an extent where the Russians have admitted it without admitting it. Lithuania, the planning that went on, the dedication to poisoning his food with an isotope, radioactive isotope, then him dying, there was no way of stopping him from dying, and him dying over a period of time, and yada yada yada. That seems feasible. That adds up. When you look at this, theoretically, a Russian or a Russian agent is supposed to have attended the property, placed some of this chemical on the door, the front door, and then left, in the hope that the former spy and his daughter were the first ones to touch it, become infected with it, blah blah blah, and die. I have issues with that because that doesn't scream of methodical planning. Now, everybody can point the finger at Putin and say he's this, he's that. Look, that's people's opinion. But you're talking about a very high, a former, very high-ranking member of the FSB. Putin is not an idiot. And neither are the people below him who would have been instructed to carry out this if it was Russia. It's just too sloppy. It's too loose. Anyways, I digress. Let's move back on to the chemical. So, the OPCW came in and carried out their test. It's since come out that it's found to be a nerve agent called BZ, I believe. They're great with these two-letter acronyms. BZ. There's only two countries what produce and stockpile BZ. Can you guess who they are? The UK and the USA. However, don't worry, because we've already dealt with that, because the government jumped up, and so did the OPCW, to say they're supposed to be an independent body. They also jumped up and went, but you must remember, anybody can produce BZ. So it's still leaving the door open for us to blame Russia. Well, I'm sorry, but on that one statement alone, surely anybody can produce Novichok. At the end of the day, it's a recipe. It's like saying Russian petrol is different to our petrol. Is it hell? It's a systematic process. If you bake a cake, you don't say that's an English cake and only English people can bake it. Anybody in the world can make it if they've got the recipe. And look, I'm not even going to start claiming to profess I understand how deep intelligence works and the MI5s, MI6s of the FSB, which was KGB but then became the FSB because it sounds better and it gets rid of a lot of the stigma. I'm not even going to profess that I know the ins and outs of these people, but I'm pretty sure that the British will know how to make Novichok, because there is people, their sole job, their sole existence is to find out what these chemicals are, what's in them, how can we replicate them. We need to be able to replicate them so then we can try and find ways of combating them, ways of producing not antibodies, but like I don't know what the correct term would be for an nerve agent, but like an antidote, basically. So anyways, I digress, so we'll move on, we'll leave the poisoning alone. We'll come back to it and probably in a later episode once everything's settled down, which magically, as soon as the report came out that it wasn't completely implicitly Russia, magically it disappeared off every mainstream news network that there is. So, very, very soon after this, in Syria, there was a claim of chemical attack. So, chemical attacks, chemical bombs have been used. Assad, oh look, he's used, the Syrian government has used chemical weapons, and they're backed by Russia. Again, it's feeding the narrative of chemical warfare. Russia's implicit in chemical warfare. The first people to turn around and say, please come into the zone and inspect with us, was Russia. Because Russia wanted straight away, we have not used chemical warfare, we have not used chemical weapons. If you go online, there is footage where a doctor winks at a cameraman, nods his head and smiles, and then 20 seconds later collapses, and I can only describe it as a very poor imitation of carrying out CPR. It's conducted on him. I've seen better recordings on Casualty. I don't know if Casualty's still on, actually. That's a good. Should I use Casualty as an example? Well, you know what I mean. Holby City, whatever. I've seen better example. In fact, go down to your local first aid class, and Resusciani on the floor is a more convincing dead body or dying body than that doctor is. He winks and smiles at the camera and then magically faints, but as you know with anybody that faints, if they control their fall, if their natural instinct is not to land heavy, so they'll automatically try and slow themselves down. You can't control it, it's a natural function. Anybody who really faints will hit the ground like a sack of spuds. Don't matter if they land face first, they smash the face in, whether they land head first, whatever. If you see somebody faint and it is a controlled faint, their body, they may not put an arm out to stop them, but their body will automatically, instinctively try and protect certain parts of the body. You can't fake fainting. When you try and fake it, it looks so damn obvious, it's unreal. So anyways, so we're moving along with the chemical weapons. So, alright, America went in. Now Trump, I've got to admit, I like him. I like him a lot. Trump went, right, yeah, I'm with you all on this. Let's stand together with the UK and France. Let's fire some missiles and teach them a lesson. There's a lot of theories behind that. I personally, and this is only my opinion, and it's not an aspersion, and I'm not promoting it, I'm just explaining it. My opinion would be that Trump's playing the game. Trump knows full well it was that Russia did not use chemical weapons, or that the Syrian government used chemical weapons. They was very captured about the targets that they went for were pre-warned. They were advised what was going to happen. We're talking like there was 3 or 4 days worth of pre-warning to Russia and the Syrian people who cleared those areas completely. Cleared them completely. To all intents and purposes, there are theoretically empty buildings at the point when the missiles struck. And it was also reported a lot of missiles landed in the middle of nowhere. Absolutely no population, no buildings, no targets, just landed in the middle of nowhere, in the ground, exploded, and the Americans came out, and this is very key. The Americans came out, and you've got to remember the Russians will be watching this, and the Syrians will be watching this, blah, 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 blah. They came out and they said, all of our missiles hit where we wanted them to hit. Now that's a key thing. You've got to think, how would you send a message to someone else, I'm just playing the game, without openly saying it? He was saying to Putin, and I believe Putin, we sent the missiles into the middle of nowhere. That's what we wanted to do. It was only for show. And I think Putin understands this. And this is where I come with Trump, because you've got to... There's a big thing going on at the moment with the Q boards and Q Anonymous and certain intelligence things coming out before it happens. There's a massive game afoot in America. And I try and preach to as many of the people who will listen to me, okay, we're in the UK. We have very different systems than in America. But treat America like a Petri dish. Because whatever is happening overtly in America is happening covertly in this country. The thing with America is that they are so vocal about their politics. They're so open. Everything's so out in the open. Everything's so dramatised. You can look at America, and whatever is happening in America, I will guarantee you, a pound to a penny to a pinch of shit, it's happening in this country as well. The thing with Trump is, I think Trump knows what the bigger picture is. He's surrounded himself with generals. He isn't like any other president. He's not following the usual old school office holders and jobs for the boys. He's moved all of them out. He's pulled all the military in. He's pulled the generals in. He's pulled the Marines in. He's pulled military intelligence in, and he's running with the military. And they're the people who want to stop the corruption. There is an open admission from one general, and I will have to try and find it and bring it up on another episode, where he said if Hillary Clinton had have won, the military were prepared to carry out a coup. The military were prepared to step in and carry out a coup. Donald Trump did not stand for president because he wanted to. He was asked. And he was asked, the common theory is he was asked by some very high-ranking military generals, etc. Now, just going back to the Russian spies, the chemical bombings, how would the UK benefit from setting Russia up? Well, the UK are leaving the EU. Alright, because of Brexit, we're pulling away from the EU. If I said, let me pose another question. Would it be beneficial to the UK-USA relationship if there was another Cold War? If there was a common enemy that both the UK and America could team up against, would it strengthen the relationship between the UK and America? The answer is yes. So, what's to say, and this is just, I'm thinking out aloud. What's to say somebody on the UK side didn't think we need to make a boogeyman out of Putin and we need to make Russia the enemy, because then that will make America stand by us, it will strengthen our relationship with them, and when we carry out Brexit, we've still got a massive ally to rely on. Have a look at who was involved in the attacks, in the retaliation. The UK, the USA, and France. That's one of the first times that countries like Germany and the other big nations in the EU haven't stepped in. And that wasn't by choice. The three that did do it actively did it, excluding other countries from the EU. That's called relationship building. That's politics. It's a massive game. And the sooner that people realise that your status on Facebook means very fucking little in the real world, you need to look at the bigger picture and what's going on. So, we're going to touch on Brexit in the next segment. Not a massive thing on Brexit because it bores the shit out of people. And then we'll have a look at North and South Korea. Here we go, everyone's favourite segment. Just a heads up, it might sound slightly different. I'm still playing a little bit with the pop filter and mic settings and stuff like that. Hey, it's the first episode. Leave me alone. Don't pick on me. Right, so Brexit, everyone's favourite topic. Very quickly, first of all, mainstream media, including BBC radios, all the papers, a lot of the, how can we say, upper class people in the country. Yeah, that's maybe a good way. So, a lot of people, I've just got one thing to say. First of all, we've had a vote. Second of all, the majority voted to leave. Third of all, get the fuck over it. Because I'm sick to death of every day. They're not bothering about talking about what we can do with the Northern Ireland Board, and they're not bothered talking about trade deals. All everyone ever seems to be bothered about is, oh yeah, but before we actually leave, we do need another vote to see if we really want to leave. I mean, come off it, really? Is that how it is? Is that where we are in this day and age? Is that what we're stretching to? Okay, yeah, we've had a vote. It turned out it didn't happen how we wanted it. So let's have another fucker. What's going to happen? Are we going to have 8 votes, 9 votes, 10 votes? Are we going to keep voting until we vote to remain? And let me ask one question. If we'd have voted and Remain had won, would we still be talking about having another vote? Would the fuck? It'd have been, that's it, right, that's it, lads, sorry to piss on your bonfire. We're staying in the EU. What? Another vote? Fuck off, not a chance, mate. We're in the EU now, fuck you. Well, I'm sorry, you likes of Will Self. You fucking... Oh, man, he winds me up. He winds me up because the day that the result came out, that the majority of the British, UK, Welsh, Scotland, blah, 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 the majority of people combined had voted to leave. And do you know what he said? I just want to make it clear that all these people that have voted to leave are absolute imbecile morons who shouldn't even have the right to vote if they're going to vote like this. So that's exactly the same as saying, you don't agree with me, so you should not have a voice. That smells like a dictatorship. Good job he's a nobody. Let's be fair. If you have international interests, massive companies, maybe, or if you have quite a lot of money, or let's strip it back to basics. If you are in a industry, job, lifestyle, however you want to term it, what is not affected directly by mass immigration, uncontrolled mass immigration, stupid amounts of legislation, absolutely ridiculous amounts of legislation, then yeah, you're gonna lose out a little bit. But do you know what? Do you know the average person on the street only stands to benefit? I'm not even going to go down the routes of how much money we pay the EU, and I think we was the 4th or 5th biggest contributor to the EU budget. We was one of only 8 countries to put more in than what we actually got out of it. We was one of the only countries who had to follow certain rules that was made in Brussels, that even people in Brussels didn't have to follow. I mean, look, you've just got to look at how there was when it came that we was going to leave. The general gist was, this is from the EU, the general gist, and I am only paraphrasing, it is only a parody, but the general gist was, right, that's it, you don't want to be with us, you aren't having fuck all. And do you know what we did? Oh, shit. Alright, how much money do we need to give you in order for you to give us at least a little bit? We should have just turned around and gone, alright then, fair enough. Right, every single illegal immigrant who has failed asylum, right, get yourself to the ports because you're off to France. They'd have soon gone, hang on, when we said you couldn't have anything. I mean, right, everyone's worried about trade. I would just look at one industry. Somebody write a letter to BMW, Audi, Vauxhall, Audi, BMW, Vauxhall, Volkswagen, what other makes? I mean, every make you can think of. Fiat. Fix it again tomorrow. But let's write a letter to these companies and say, by the way, the EU said that you can't trade with us, so we don't want your cars anymore. Who do you think one of the biggest customers is to the EU? Who do you think all these EU countries sell to? Because I'm going to tell you something now. Countries like Germany with all these massive car industries, they don't sell that many cars to fucking Romania. They come here. To the British people. Why? Because we buy them. And you're telling me that the EU's just going to shut the door? Not a chance. But do you know what is going to happen? Not only are we going to be able to trade with the EU countries, because they can't stop us regardless of what they say they're going to do, but we're going to be able to trade with the rest of the world. The rest of the world! I mean, all the people who are scaremongering about trade, wake the fuck up! We've gone from only being able to trade with the EU, feasibly, because when you traded within the EU you didn't have to pay certain tariffs, etc., to now we can pretty much go around the rest of the world and say to countries, there's nothing stops us going to countries like China, America, some of the Scandinavian countries what aren't in the EU, countries like India, countries like Korea, bloody Japan, Australia. We can go to all these countries and go, hey, do you know what? We want to trade with you. Do you know what tariffs we're going to charge? And they'll go, oh, what tariffs? We're going to charge you fuck all, mate. Get your gear in here, we'll have it. Anyway, you need to all realise as well, and I was told this by a very reliable Cockney mechanic in London, that Chinese cars are the way forward, because all these big make cars, your BMWs, your Audis, blah, 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 they're on a losing stride. The more electronics that go into the cars, and the more complicated the cars get electronically, there's more and more faults with a lot of these major cars. And look, I won't pull punches, but the Japanese cars, and I agree with what he was saying, because I had quite a long conversation with him about the very subject. The Japanese are leading the way, especially when it comes to a lot of the electronics that are going inside cars. They're the top of the game when it comes to stuff like this. And it's going to turn where your Hondas, Toyotas, I'm trying to think, do you know you're on the spot and you can't think? This is what you get for not doing much research. Jesus. It's Asperges, don't pick on me. It's on the autistic scale, you know. I'm proud of it. Yeah. Don't worry about Brexit. Stop the scaremongering. Especially, do you know the BBC? For fuck's sake, you're supposed to represent the people. The majority of people voted to leave, so why the hell do I have to watch every programme or radio station or everything else always bleat on about, yeah, well, it's going to be doom and gloom when we leave, we should be staying in. Yeah, we should be staying in. Oh, you're all idiots for voting leave. Well, do you know what? We pay your licence fee. We pay for the BBC. So, well, we'll just stop paying for the BBC and get you all fucking sacked. Jobs are good, un. I'm up for that. Save everybody money. Get rid of the BBC for being absolute idiots. Anyways, that's enough of Brexit. That's my 9-minute rant about Brexit. However, there is some good coming in the world, and that's in Korea. So everyone's probably going to pick on me saying that I'm saying Korea. Korea. Well, I'm from Yorkshire. Never mind I'm from Yorkshire, I'm from Hull. So you're lucky I'm putting H's on words and I'm actually trying to pronounce my words properly. So, Korea. You've got North Korea and South Korea. South Korea has thrived. South Korea is one of the most advanced for how its economy works. It's one of the most advanced countries outside of the Western world. But South Korea's had backing of everywhere, but mainly America. North Korea is struggling. It's got that many sanctions on it. They basically can only import very, very little from a very small amount of people, a very small amount of countries. And as such, they're struggling. I think it's something stupid, like even the conscripts in the army only get nutritional value of about 600 calories a day. But do you know what? There's light over the horizon. At this moment in time, as I record this, Kim Jong-un, the ruler of North Korea, crossed the border into South Korea for a peace delegation. How fucking amazing is that? Do you know what? Give him his dues. He's going to denuclearise. They're already talking about that, regardless. He said to... What did he say to the South Korean leader? I don't think there's any reason for my South Korean friends to be woken up by the sound of missiles anymore. Or where's them effect? I'm paraphrasing because I'm working off memory for that. But look, people who are calling Trump need to realise that this has happened on the back of Trump. This whole thing with North and South Korea, the missiles, this is all from Trump. So before you start calling him a bigot and slagging him off, especially UK people who are slagging him off, because guess what, he's not your fucking president. So yes, you're entitled to your opinion about him, but you're not entitled to voice your opinion so loud that... There was a gentleman who was on the radio. He phoned into Radio 4. Yes, I listen to Radio 4 because I'm sad. He phoned into Radio 4, and his exact words was, we all need to stand together and prove to President Trump that everybody in the UK does not like him. Words to them effect, alright? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a UK citizen. I have been all my life, and I like Trump. And I can point to a lot of people who I know who like Trump. So can people stop saying, because they don't like him and they represent all of us, can you just leave that? Trump's doing some amazing work, and let's be fair, if North Korea and South Korea become friends, and Kim Jong-un, by the looks of it, has now realised that his country might not be in a brilliant position economically, and he's actually said that he wants to push his country forward and make it an economical powerhouse like the rest of the world. Do you know what? We should be embracing that. We should embrace that. We should embrace him. And if he stands by what he says, if he gives up the missiles, if he creates peace with South Korea, do you know what? Lift the embargoes. And instead of giving India £400 million foreign aid, and they've got a space programme, but the UK still sends them foreign aid, how about we give it to North Korea? If he actually does what he says he's going to do, let's reward him. His people are starving, for God's sake. But again, I'm sure some people out there will think that I'm just being stupid. And why would we want to reward somebody for actually wanting to be peaceful in the world? Because we all know that wars are good. Wars are good to an extent. Wars are good when they're needed. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I hug trees and I believe all wars are bad. I believe all wars have victims. And went from the victims' standpoints and the innocents who die. In fact, the people who die regardless, even if they're enemies. Like World War II, I have this big issue when it comes to World War II, because you know what? We're enough along the timeline now that we shouldn't be looking at German people who died during World War II and going, oh yeah, but they were Nazis. They were Nazis, weren't they? They hated everybody. Do you know what? Regardless of the beliefs, that's a human life that died. So I believe that the victim of World War II wasn't the British people. It wasn't the Americans. Even to the extent where I would say that the victim, now, looking back, the victim wasn't necessarily the Jews, although before everybody jumps in and starts pounding my ass for that, they was victims of what happened during World War II, but the human race was the victim of World War II, because a lot of innocent German people died, just the same as a lot of French and a lot of British and a lot of American and a lot of nationalities. And when it came to the other side with China and Japan and those battles, a lot of innocent people died. So let's, instead of pointing the finger and blaming specifics, let's just take a step back and go, do you know what? The human race was the victim. The human race were the people that was what lost out because of World War II. However, I also believe in fair wars. So if a war is needed, then we should have it. Let's invade France. As soon as we come out of Brexit. So there's one last segment that we're going to hit on to. And I appreciate the podcast might have been a little bit here and there and a little bit jaggedy, but it's the first one. Bear with me. It will get more refined as the time goes on. I'm doing this on my own. I don't have a massive wealth of knowledge when it comes to recording. I've spent some money. I've actually gone down the route of getting some half-decent gear, unlike when I did my photography podcast. And I was just using a 99p microphone from Asda or something like that. And I remember there's one comment, my photography podcast, you see, this is Asperges for you, my head goes off on rants. My photography podcast, I always remember the first comment I got, and I was dead chuffed. And I can remember now, it was, Phil's got a lot of good things to say, but the podcast is a little bit rough. And do you know what? Whether you take that as an insult or a compliment, I thought it was fucking brilliant. Right, anyway, so we're going to hit the next segment. It's not going to be a massive long one. I'm just going to rant on about Sadiq Khan. I'm going to discuss Sadiq Khan. And then we'll close off. And I'll tell you how you can spend money. And give me loads of money. And how you can get in touch. And we can all become a happy family. Love each other. And I don't know. Admit that the world's fucking going down the pan.
Visit SkullPhil.com and support the show.
Right, so here we go. Last segment of the first ever episode of this podcast, which you're all probably going to unsubscribe from because it's just me waffling shit. So, right, Sadiq Khan. First of all, I'm going to let me put out a premise. My understanding of the position or the office of the Mayor of London is it is not a politically motivated position. While somebody holds that position the very same as the Speaker of the House of Commons, although they will come from a political party and they will have political beliefs, whilst in that office they should remain politically neutral in order to benefit the people. When you are the Mayor of London, you are not just there for the Labour people of London, you are there for the whole occupancy of London, everybody. You are there to represent the people of London. That is my understanding. If I am wrong, please let me know. Drop me a line at phil@skullphil.com and correct me. And if I am wrong, I will hold my hands up. That's just my understanding. With my understanding as it is, and I've explained my understanding of what the Mayor of London should be politically neutral. I believe the office of mayor should be involved with improving the city, keeping the city safe, ensuring that the other arms of the city do what they should be doing, such as the police, etc. I just want to raise one fact. I'm sick to death of hearing Sadiq Khan tell us all how much Trump is an evil man and how much Trump should not be coming to the country. Let me just hit on one thing here. So, this is an article from The Sun. It's very recent. I'm just gonna give the actual headline. Murder capital. Sadiq Khan faces calls to resign over London's spiralling murder rate after another teenager gunned down overnight. The Mayor of London, who vowed to increase stop and searches in January to tackle the issue, is now under huge pressure. Right. Everyone took the piss out of Boris Johnson, and they still do. Everybody took the piss out of Boris Johnson whilst he was in the position of Mayor of London. And it's statistically proven he was a better mayor than Sadiq Khan. And everybody took the piss out of Boris. Do you know what? Boris actually did things for the people. And he wasn't... They're always going to have the political beliefs. And they're always going to have the slight leans when it comes to certain things, and the politics is always going to creep into the office because it's hard to become unbiased. Like me, I'm very unbiased. Yeah, believe anything. So, the Express. This is what I mean. Oh man. So the Express. Sadiq Khan taunts Donald Trump with protest threat as he announces UK visit. Sadiq Khan has reignited his row with Donald Trump after the Mayor of London warned the US President his visit to the UK would be marred by protests. Right. Let me stop there and just invent something. Sadiq Khan, you are not the head of Antifa. You are not the head of a protest group. It is... I don't care about politics. I don't care about viewpoints. Let's talk basic morals. As a representative of an office of this country, which the Mayor of London, you are the Mayor of our capital. As the Mayor of London, hold some bloody professionalism and stop being so disrespectful to a member of state from another country. I'm going to voice it because it is okay for the common average Joe to say Trump's a bigot, Trump's a racist, I don't like Trump because of this, he shouldn't come to this country. That's an opinion, fair enough. When you hold an appointed office, which the Mayor of London is an appointed office, he's voted into that position by the people, stop being so bloody disrespectful. When Idi Amin was the High Grand Ruler and whatever else he decided to call himself of Uganda, and he called in on the Queen unexpectedly, the Queen didn't turn her back on him. She met with him, she had tea with him. That's somebody who knows how to be diplomatic. The Queen will be having a meeting with Donald Trump. I can't remember has the Queen tweeted? Has the Queen tweeted that Donald Trump can go and fuck off? I don't think she has. Should I check to see if the Queen's... dear Mr. Trump, if you come to our country... And don't pick on me for my Queen impressions, I love the royal family. If you come to our country, we're going to protest. She's not done that, because she's a diplomatic person. And do you know what? I'm going to be honest with you now. We're coming out of the EU. People like Sadiq Khan need to realise that America has been one of our longest and oldest allies. Before the revolution in 1776, they were us. However, they had their independence, and fair play to them. We've now, nearly 200 years later, we've now got our independence from the EU. It just took us a little bit longer to have our own little spike of independence. But look, why should the Mayor of London even voice negativeness? Surely it's in his interest for any head of state around the world to come to London. It's going to draw people into London, regardless whether they're for or against Trump. It's going to draw people into London. It's going to increase revenue. Oh, hang on. Yeah. Hang on. Hang on. What did it say? He taunts Donald Trump with protest threats. Oh yeah, you see, I've just brainwave. I need a jingle for brainwave. A fucking jingle for everything else. If Donald Trump comes and there's violent protests and people get hurt, heaven forbid, people get hurt, and businesses get destroyed, like what has happened in the past, is Sadiq Khan going to take responsibility? Because at the end of the day, he has asked for these protests, hasn't he? I've actually, this is how passionate I feel about this stupidness, but I actually printed out some notes referenced to Khan. There's a blog online, the Spectator blog, and the headline caught my eye. Is it Islamophobic to draw attention to Sadiq Khan's links with extremists? It's a very long blog post, but I'm going to just narrow it down here. I've printed out several paragraphs, but I'm just going to go into the first paragraph, and then if you want to read it, The Spectator, just Google it and you'll find it. It states, but you don't have to go back very far in Khan's past to find links with some pretty unsavoury characters. Some of these associations date back to his time as a director of Liberty and a human rights lawyer, trying to get the UK to lift its ban on the American Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, who has described Jews as bloodsuckers and called Hitler a very great man. And speaking at the same time, I've just lost my whole... This is what I get for not wearing my glasses. And speaking at the same conference as Saji Abu Ibrahim, a member of the now proscribed Islamic organisation that trained the 7/7 bomber Mohammed Sadiq Khan. Is that a coincidence? Sadiq Khan? But other instances are less easily explained away by his professional commitments. For instance, in 2004, he appeared on a platform with 5 Islamic extremists at a conference in London organised by Al-Qasiyah, a group that has published works by the notorious Holocaust denier Paul Eisen. He was billed not as a director of Liberty Human Rights, but as a Labour parliamentary candidate. Look, I mean, I'm not going to go into it all. I can't really be arsed. It's the first episode and I'm in a really good mood. I'm actually chuffed that it's potentially going to come out half decent, although it probably won't. But please bear with me. And we'll get better together. So, I think right about now, the end of the podcast, I think it's time to summarise, and we'll talk about how you can get in touch and how we can build a family together. And we can all be skulls. So, to summarise, well, what have we talked about? We've talked about who I am, who SkullPhil is, and what SkullPhil podcast. Look, I just want to talk. I just want to talk and empty my head, because my head, every second I'm awake, runs at 100 miles an hour. I could go from, if I could just plug it in and let you view it, you'd understand how mental my head is. But I enjoy it, it's quite fun. I urge anybody with any form of mental health disorder, anybody who's on the Asperges scale or the autism scale, anybody who suffers with depression, anybody who suffers with anxiety, anybody at all who, do you know what, you just maybe one day or sometimes feel as though life's just absolute crock of shit, drop me an email. If you drop me an email, I will contact you. I will reply, and I will give you ways and means of reaching me. So, if you want to get in touch, like I've said time and time again, you can go to the website, which is SkullPhil.com. Skull as in the bone in your head. Phil as in the name with one L. .com as in .com. There's no other way to explain that, fucker. So, go there, there's a contact form you can fill in. If you want to drop me an email, feel free to. Other than that, guys, again, just to cover off legally, anything I've said in this podcast has either been quoted, and I've given you the sources, where I've quoted it from, or I've made clear that I have been paraphrasing, working from memory, might not be 100% actual word-for-word quotations, but I've made that clear at every opportunity. The things I've included in the podcast are purely my opinion. My opinion, which is protected under human rights, which, hopefully, God, I hope it transfers across once we do leave Brexit. But look, at the end of the day, it's my opinion. If I've upset, hurt, or offended any single person, please contact me, make me aware, and I will do my utmost to discuss with you, and we can work on it. So, peace out, guys. This is the first episode. That is the first episode over and done with. I've been Phil Green. This is SkullPhil Talks. You know what, motherfucker? Welcome to the family.
Thanks for listening. Visit SkullPhil.com to stay up to date and support the show. See you next time.